Hey, it is Xennial Gamer, and today we're going to be launching a brand new series called How to Counter. I'm thinking you guys can guess what this series is all about. We're going to be talking about how to counter meta monsters in guild content. Now, if they are also meta in RTA, we'll talk about them a little bit in RTA as well. So we're starting off with arguably one of the most meta monsters that crosses both guild content and RTA, which is Savannah. Now, this is not a how to build video, this is not a how to use video, it's literally how do you beat this monster when it's on defense or for RTA purposes when your opponent drafts it. With that said, in order to know how to beat any monster, you actually have to really understand very well what that monster does and why that monster is effective at beating you. So the skill 3 does several things. Now, if you read the description, it says the rider does this, the beast does that. All of which is pretty cool and works into the animation, but for purposes of beating the overall unit, what we care about is the fact that when Savannah does her skill 3, she's going to defense break you, she's going to take away your attack bar, and then she's going to speed buff her own team so that they can lap you. Now, with that said, there are a lot of accuracy checks and a couple of qualifiers that go along with Savannah's skill 3. So first qualifier, her attack must be higher than your defense. That means that if you're using defense scaling units or heavy defense units, she can't defense break you, unless maybe she's got an attack buff and you don't have a defense buff. And that also comes into play. You want to keep in mind, is her attack going to be higher than what a normal build would be? Second qualifier is that her attack speed must be faster than your attack speed in order to take away your attack bar. Now, this is why you will see Savannah typically run with a speed lead. This is why you'll see Savannah typically run in faster turn 1 style teams, because if you run her in a turn 2 team, she loses one of the biggest things that her skill 3 does. If she's not faster than you, she doesn't take away your attack bar. Now, Savannah's skill 2 is also pretty important because of the fact that Savannah can lap you. If everything goes right with her skill 3, she's going to get another attack, or she could proc if she's on violent, but she's going to potentially get another attack. And the skill 2 hits really hard for one reason that a lot of people don't always realize, which is that she does damage which scales to negative effects. So keep in mind, like if you did manage to keep some sort of buffs on, the beast is going to change those debuffs to continuous damage, which scales her damage even further, and then of course your defense broken. She just does really big damage with her skill 2. So when we look at these two skills, and the skill 1 we're really not worried about, it doesn't play a big role here, but just know that it does damage based off her speed differential with you, and also applies as slow. But if you get to the point where Savannah's using her skill 1, it usually means you survived the initial attack and you're probably going to win. Not always, but probably. Now, in addition to those qualifiers, obviously she's going through 2 accuracy resistance checks against every one of the monsters on your team, so she's going through 8 separate accuracy and resistance checks. Now, of course, that's a little bit of an oversimplification because, for example, if you want to cut Savannah, if you're trying to cut her, and she takes the attack bar away from your attack bar booster, you're probably not going to get to cut, and maybe it's not as big of a deal if a different monster resisted, or if you're trying to get immunity or cleansing, or whatever the case may be. So it may be that you're really hoping that one specific monster gets that resistance, and then it's no longer that 8 accuracy res checks because it's down to Savannah versus your one monster. Either way, though, the point kind of stands that if your entire team is able to counter Savannah, then those accuracy resistance checks come into play because you're, even with six checks, you're statistically or mathematically you're supposed to get at least 1 resistance in there, sometimes 2. And so if the entire team is able to do something useful, then those accuracy resistance checks come into play. But if you only have maybe 1 monster or 2 monsters that can help you, then you have far fewer ways to rely on that particular check. Okay, now let's talk about stat ranges. This is something that I'm going to be talking about throughout this series. Anytime that you're trying to beat a monster, understanding how that monster is built and what stat ranges it may have through the enemy build is really important. There's going to be big variations based on rune quality and stage of game, and then there's going to be some other minor variations based on each of our individual strategies. But ultimately, most monsters tend to get built with relatively similar stat ranges because their base stats determine a lot of the value that we're getting from the runes. For example, Savannah has an 800 base attack, so she's getting much more value from attack percentage on a rune than she is with defense percent when she has a 600 base defense. And then on top of that, we know that Savannah's got to have a lot of attack in order to be consistent with her defense break. That whole your attack must be higher than the enemy's defense thing. We also know that she's got to be fast. Now, the best builds for Savannah typically going to be in Violent Will. However, you will see a fair amount of Savannahs that are also built on Swift, and usually those are going to be built into teams where there's like an attack bar booster, or the entire team is just built crazy fast. But most of the time, you'll see Savannah built on Violent, which also gives us kind of a speed cap. You can only go so fast in a Violent set to begin with, and then for a monster that needs as many stats as Savannah does, that limits really your top end speed even more. This is one of my highest efficiency rune sets because she's on a siege defense. I've run her on G3 siege defense for the past 3 seasons with a winning record. So while I know there are definitely much better built Savannahs out there, I think this is a pretty fair representation of what a higher end G3 Savannah would look like. If you're in a lower tier, G2, G1, or Conqueror, whichever range of guild content you're in, or RTA content, you can kind of reduce the stats based on the stat quality of your competitors. But those reduced stats are mostly going to come down to possibly lower crit damage, possibly lower accuracy, possibly lower HP. At the end of the day, we all need to put 18 to 2200 attack at least on our Savannah so she can defense break. We all need to get her from 240, 250 up to 270, 280 speed. That's kind of the stat range in order to make sure that she can take away the enemy's attack bar and lap. And when those two stats are pretty much forced upon us, everything else, you know, there's only so many stats you can put on a rune. So generally speaking, you may occasionally see a Savannah that's got close to 30k HP. I think that's mostly only going to happen in like G3 content. Usually you're going to see the Savannah somewhere between like 18 and 24k HP. Usually you're going to see her somewhere between like 900 and 1200 defense, 240 to 280 speed. Most Savannahs are going to be built with probably less than 100 crit rate, unless they're on a slot 4 crit rate, in which case they may have less than 100 crit damage instead. But it's going to be awfully hard to get Savannah at like near 100 crit rate and also super high crit damage with all the other stats she needs. And then accuracy is one of the biggest things that's going to suffer on a lot of Savannahs because she needs so many other stats. Mine does have a little bit more accuracy through artifacts. I think that'll be the case for most people. She doesn't benefit as much from things like additional damage by X, so her artifacts tend to carry things like accuracy and then crit damage, maybe speed increasing effects, stuff like that. So I think it's fair to say that most Savannahs are probably going to be somewhere around 50 accuracy or less. There may be some exceptions, but as a general rule, if you run really high resistance monsters against Savannah, and then you remember that she's going through 8 accuracy checks in RTA or 6 accuracy checks in guild content, you've got a pretty good chance of dropping a couple of resistances in there because you're going to have such a big advantage in that particular check. Now guys, we are actually going to do some action in this video. We're going to go fight Savannah several times. I'm going to show you a few different ways that you can beat her. But before we jump into the action, guys, I'm going to ask you to hang out with me for just a moment because I got some information that I think is going to be really good for you, and obviously it helps me out if you listen. Today's video has been sponsored by the Huawei App Gallery. Now guys, it's really cool. They have made available discounts specifically just to the subscribers and viewers of my channel, and the discounts are legit, guys. Like, really legit. You can see I bought one pack up here already of these brand new rune packs which came out, which by the way, these are pretty good packs. I'm usually really hard on any kind of rune pack, but this pack is pretty legit, man. Being able to pick your slot and your set and everything else. Now, we're not going to show you the rune I got because it was fairly bad. but if you're ever going to buy a rune pack in the game, this is probably the best rune pack I've ever seen. So it's a really good time to talk about the discounts that we were able to get through the app gallery. And by the way, guys, this is available to people anywhere in the world. There's actually a link in the video description. I'm also going to put up an info card to a separate video. It's a short video, I promise, that shows you how to install it and set it up. But the way it works is that every time you make a purchase, you're going to get 10% cashback points. Now that's always there with the app gallery. That's always there. So if you buy a €100 pack, you get $10 in euros discount on your next purchase, and that purchase can be Summoner's War, it can be any other game or anything in the Huawei store, honestly. So it's nice that it's not just limited to Summoner's War. Now on top of that, you can claim 2 daily coupons that are just for subscribers of this channel. Those coupons can be valued as high as €24 on a €100 pack. There's 2 new coupons that are released every single day. Again, there's a link in the video description to show you those coupons. You don't have to use them on the spot. You can just claim them, kind of like flipping a coupon. They're good for a week. So that €24 coupon, that's 24%. You're also getting 10% in cashback points. So we're up to a 34% savings. On top of that, if you're a subscriber of this channel and you register through the link in the video description, you get another 10% through the entire month of June. Now we're at 44% savings, guys. It's like half off, right? And then lastly, if you are a VIP, basically if you're a whale, Huawei does give you an extra 15% discount for every month that you achieve VIP status. So in this particular case, you could legit be spending €41 for a €100 pack. 59% savings. It's insane, guys. Like, you can't get deals like that anywhere else. Now, a lot of these deals, the coupon and the additional 10%, those are available just for subscribers of this channel, so you really want to make sure you register through the link in the description and then click the link to watch the video that shows you how to set everything up. With that said, let's go look at some action on how to counter Savannah. Okay, so real quick, guys, I'm positive that I will find some Savannahs in our guild war. Okay, guys, so we are looking now at a Tsarian Mali Savannah. This is kind of a common guild war defense. It's losing traction in Siege. You don't see it quite as often in Siege, but you do still see this a lot in guild war. In G1 meta, you probably see this quite a bit more often. So we're going to bring in a defense scaling team. Now, I recognize that these are 3 premium Nat 5s. Fang is obviously amazing. But honestly, guys, you can do this with any monsters that do damage that scale to defense. So there are some 2As that do defense scaling damage. There are some 4 stars, gargoyles, for example. Any monster that does damage scaling defense will prevent the Savannah from defense breaking. Now, the Mali does have some strip, but it's not consistent and it's not AoE. So if you don't have this particular exact OP team that I'm running, you could look at bringing in some gargoyles, or you could look at bringing in some of the other defense scaling units along with an immunity buffer. Preferably a fire immunity buffer so that you have a better chance of the Savannah glancing. But if you just have an immunity buffer that you build on triple defense, it's kind of the same thing. Like, you could build a triple defense Triana. She's still going to be super tanky. The Savannah's not going to be able to take her attack bar away at that point because there's no attack buff on the enemy side. So again, knowing those stat ranges, we know that the Savannah's probably not going to be much higher than 2200 attack. Anything over that is really difficult to accomplish, especially on a resistance-based team like this. The Savannah's probably built to be on the tankier side because this team is meant for a longer fight. So the point here is the whole concept, guys, the whole concept is bring in heavy defense monsters so the Savannah can't defense break you. If she can't defense break you, she can't do that much damage. And then you want to bring in some sort of immunity, and preferably something that gives you both immunity and healing while you're dealing with that Tsarian, because the Tsarian can defense break, but it can't strip. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so the enemy actually has a speed tuning issue there. It looked like the Savannah was faster than the Mali, which Mali really should go first in order to strip. In this case, my will runes completely shut her down. But you will notice that my Fang does not have will runes because he's on destroy, and she did nothing to him. So there's a max resistance Fang. Remember what I talked about earlier as far as Savannahs typically are not built with that high of accuracy. And then, of course, the Fang defense was so high that the Savannah was not able to do anything in terms of defense break. So I resisted the attack bar pushback, and then she couldn't defense break me. Now, one little key right here, you do not want to put, if you're running this exact team, if you happen to have these 3 monsters or any other kind of buffers, you don't want to put additional buffs on Fang because that gives Savannah more buffs to strip. So we're actually going to put the Soul Protect, even though Fang's being targeted, we're going to put the Soul Protect on the Velajewel. We will go ahead and just do a little fluff damage on the Savannah, go ahead and put our immunity up, and I can literally auto at this point. I'll target the Savannah. I could have just targeted the Tessarium, but it's over, guys. It's over. All you have to do to beat a Savannah is survive that first flurry, get some immunity up, and then you're good.
A few moments later.
Okay, guys, I think I probably got overexcited with the concept of Come to Us's AI working, so I guess we couldn't quite auto that Oblivion on the the Oblivion on the Tyrannus. Got a little bit scary. Okay, now immunity's up. Now we can go back to auto. There you go, guys. Now, when we're talking about RTA, I use a defense scaling pivot when the enemy team is trying to draft Savannah against me in RTA. Basically, as soon as you can tell the Savannah's coming, and the thing is, if they last pick Savannah, you don't have enough time to pivot into it, but if they pick Savannah too early, usually by the third pick, you're able to pivot into it, which is, you know, basically I just use Fang, Tyrannus, Veligul, just like you're seeing right here, or some combination of those three, depending on what the enemy monsters are, but I also work in Leo and Vertihile. My Leo is built with 2200 defense, and then he also gives himself a defense lead, so as long as the enemy team is not running Yogan, or as long as the enemy team is not running double attack buffers, and I can safely ban out the single attack buffer, nothing on my team gets defense broken. Savannah, again, speed scaling damage, so if you get the Leo through, she does like no damage and no debuffs, like she's a completely dead pick at that point. Even if the Leo gets banned, if all your stuff is defense scaling, they're not going to have enough damage to take you out by the time they've spent all their skill 3s, and then you can come back in and kind of take over control. And then just dismount Savannah before she gets back on her skill 3. Okay, so we found another Savannah team. Now this is kind of a variant of the old Commune Orion Savannah. Generally speaking, anything with Orion can be beaten with shield runes, and so in this case, this is another thing to remember. Your Savannahs can't do anything if you have immunity up. So all three of these monsters are in will runes, and then I've got some shield sets. I've got specifically one shield set on the Dover. And then this is actually a Shield Will Fran. She should be 100 resistance. She's not. She should be for this particular comp. She's not going to resist the Orion, but that, you know, Orion should, if a properly built Orion is going to be max or near max accuracy, so the resistance is irrelevant against him, but it will help a lot against the Carcano and the Savannah, because the Carcano, super stat hungry, generally not going to have more than 20 to 30 accuracy. The Savannah, super stat hungry, generally going to be under 50. So if the Fran was max resistance, she has that much more opportunity to resist. If you don't have Dover, almost any bomber works in this place. If you don't have Ciara, honestly, just a second bomber works in its place as well. Now, you can see the Orion stripped a shield instead of stripping immunity, so the Savannah did nothing to me. At this point, I'm able to just drop a bomb on the Carcano. Now that the Orion is actually, I think, going to cut my Dover. He does, but he already used his skill 3, so he couldn't do anything. We'll go ahead and drop the rest of these bombs off. And now, because the Savannah was able to get my Dover this low, Carcano's going to break the Dover, which means I need to make sure the Carcano dies, so I'll go ahead and just detonate with the Ciara. At this point, we can go ahead and stun. Again, if you don't have Dover, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the stun right there, it's nice, but this team works exactly the same if you have a CN, if you have a Taurus, like any bomber would work in its place. And again, if you don't have the Ciara, it's a little bit more YOLO because you can't detonate, but honestly, as long as you get those bombs up, you're good to go. And so this is another way to counter Savannah. And the point that I really want to make with this is countering Savannah is not specifically just about countering her. It's about countering the overall team. And I guess I should say it's about countering Savannah plus whatever enables Savannah to be dangerous. So in this case, the Orion strip and defense break enables the Savannah to be dangerous. We countered the Orion with the Shield Will, and then we countered the Savannah by preventing the Orion from stripping us. Now, Savannah is also very meta in Arena. At this point, you don't see her quite as often with some of the newer monsters that have come in, but you do still see her on a regular basis. All of the exact same concepts. We've talked about two concepts. We're about to talk about the third. The first two concepts we talked about were taking advantage of knowing her build, basically her, out-defensing her attack or outspeeding her, or working on a higher resistance build because they tend not to be built in high accuracy. The other concept is obviously just simply outspeeding and nuking her because Savannah does tend to be built fairly squishy, again talking about stat ranges. So we could use a team like this. Now if you look at this enemy's team right here, this Praha is not on Swift. I can guarantee you this Praha is not on Swift. And even if she is on Swift, she still needs a lot of other stats for a build like that to make sense. Praha's got the same base speed as Ciara, it's 100, which means I can outspeed this Praha pretty safely even with the difference in speed leads. And if I didn't feel comfortable outspeeding her, if I didn't have a fast attack bar booster, then I could just simply change into a faster speed lead as well. Now, I understand not everybody has fast speed leads, not everybody has fast attack bar boosters. If you don't have speed, then this is just a counter I wouldn't try. But it's not about the monsters. You could use a Megan in place of this Bastet. The Kali is free to play. There's a lot of big damage dealers you could use in place of the Odin as well. And the Ciara really in this team is honestly just playing as a speed lead for me. I could drop the Ciara for any other damage dealing speed lead or probably even for a Vanessa. So we did, as expected, outspeed. And in this case right here, I'm going to be able to just go ahead and one-shot this Vanessa right here. And then with the Ciara, this actually gives me a nice opportunity to drop a bomb onto that Jean. We'll do a little fluff damage onto the Praha. We're going to try and steal this immunity. And that actually worked out really nicely. We might be able to kill the Savannah. Not quite. But at this point now, I do get controlled, but it no longer matters. I've already taken out their defense breaker in the Vanessa, and I've already taken, well, there was two defense breakers. It was the Vanessa and it was the Savannah, and I took both of them out. Now, had I not been controlled, this fight obviously would have gone a little bit faster. This is not the ideal rush counter to this. I do have rush counters, but I don't think they fit as well into the concept of this video because the concept is more about how to counter the monster, not how to rush through the monster. So the point that I really want to make with this is simply just if you outspeed, you can disable Savannah. Once she's in beast form, or rather once she's in human form, she can't really do anything to you. And then you can, like I just did, just auto out. Now we're going to do one last demonstration of the speed concept to show it in guild content as well. You can see Carcano, all the rage, Kali, free to play 2A, Bastet could be replaced with Megan. Bastet's just what I happen to have rune faster. And we are going to be taking this in against the defense that I've run in G3 guild content for the past 3 seasons. Those 3 monsters have some of my highest quality rune sets. Let's see how we can do with this. So we do take first turn. At this point, we are able to take our attack boost. Now, the real question here is, do I want to dismount the Savannah, or do I want to snipe the Belinus? So we're going to start off, obviously, we just put Carcano in hidden aim form. Now, we have a couple of different choices here. I could just try and boost with the Kali, but that Ryu's going to strip me. Mostly, what I want to rely on is the glancing that we're going to get from the Carcano. And keep in mind, if you're not using Carcano, then your decisions may change. So this is just the thought process for this particular team. Again, it's all about just how do we counter Savannah and the units that enable her. So in this case, the enabling unit is actually the Belinus. So the Ryu is going to strip, the Belinus is going to defense break, allowing the Savannah to do really big damage with her skill 3, take your attack bar, and then lots and lots of debuffs for her to do that defense scaling damage on the skill 2 as well. So if I get rid of this Belinus, the thing that's most likely to happen is Savannah just kills my Bastet, which is actually no big deal. So if we do that, we take out the enabler. Now the Savannah really can't do much to me. She gets, ironically, she gets the defense break on the Kali. Now my Bastet is max resistance, so again, there's those kind of stat ranges coming into play. Carcano should be able to, wasn't quite able to dismount, but you can see without the defense break, the Savannah just didn't have enough damage to do anything, so it really didn't matter. Now the Kali is actually just occupying the Ryu. And we're going to go ahead and just dismount. 45,000 damage to do for no reason whatsoever. But the Ryu at this point, he's not going to solo me. We actually already did proc his passive, so we're able to try and get some damage with water monsters, and there you go, guys. So in this case, what we did is we took away Savannah's enabler. Savannah actually got her skill 3 out. I did not have defense scaling units. I did not have anything protecting me from her other than attribute and resistance, and that was enough because she didn't have an enabler. So guys, Savannah, extremely powerful monster, but she does require some setup. She does go through a lot of accuracy resistance checks. She does go through the qualifiers on her skill 3, and understanding how she works and how the team supporting her works allows you to build the counters that are going to allow you to beat her. Now, there's a lot of counters out there, guys. I didn't cover all the counters in this video. The goal isn't really to break down every single team because there are so many different teams. The goal is more to think about how you counter a specific monster's kit so that you can build comps to counter them out of your own box. With that said, guys, let me know in the comments what you thought about this video. Do you want to see this become like a regular series? Do you want to see me do more of these? On that note, as always, I appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time. Hey, it is Xennial. Oh, no, wait, this is the outro. My bad. Hey guys, if you want to see more content, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell notifications. It's your support that makes me want to create continuing content. I thank you guys for the support, as always, and we'll see you in the next video.